Tonight, we travel into one of the most fascinating mysteries in maritime history. A mystery not involving treasure, not involving famous battles, and not involving pirates. Instead, it involves something far stranger. Ships discovered drifting alone across empty oceans. Their sails still standing, their cargo untouched, their personal belongings left behind. Yet every member of the crew had vanished. No signs of struggle, no clear explanation, no obvious answers. Throughout history, sailors have encountered vessels that seemed frozen in time. Meals remained on tables. Navigation equipment sat exactly where it had been left. Cabins appeared undisturbed, and yet the people who should have been aboard were gone. Some of these mysteries were eventually explained. Others remain unsolved to this day. Tonight, we'll explore the remarkable stories behind history's most famous ghost ships. We'll investigate the evidence left behind, examine the theories proposed by investigators, and discover why certain maritime mysteries continue to fascinate historians centuries later. From the legendary Mary Celeste to abandoned ships discovered in modern times, we will journey across oceans and generations in search of answers. So relax, settle in, and let the sound of distant waves carry you into the strange and fascinating world of the ships nobody could explain. And before we begin, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the Forgotten Files, and let me know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Every story, every memory, and every place matters, and together we keep history alive. Now let's begin. Part 1: The Oceans of Mystery. As we begin our journey into the world of ghost ships and abandoned vessels, it is important to first understand the environment in which these mysteries were born. Long before satellites monitored the oceans, long before radio communication connected ships with distant shores, and long before modern rescue systems made it possible to track vessels across vast distances, the world's oceans were places of extraordinary uncertainty. To those who sailed them, the sea represented opportunity and danger in equal measure. It connected continents, enabled trade, carried explorers into unknown regions, and provided livelihoods for millions of people. Yet it could also isolate human beings more completely than almost any other environment on Earth. A ship departing from port often disappeared beyond the horizon for weeks or months. Once that happened, the crew existed largely on their own. Storms could emerge without warning. Navigation errors could place vessels hundreds of miles from their intended routes. Mechanical failures could leave ships stranded. Disease could spread among crews far from assistance. Even under favorable conditions, maritime life demanded constant awareness and resilience. Imagine standing aboard a sailing vessel crossing the Atlantic Ocean during the 18th or 19th century. Around you stretches nothing but water. Day after day, the horizon remains unchanged. The nearest land may be hundreds or even thousands of miles away. Communication with the outside world is impossible. Every decision made by the captain and crew carries significant consequences because help cannot be summoned quickly. In such an environment, small problems sometimes become major emergencies. A damaged mast, a navigational mistake, or a sudden change in weather can transform an ordinary voyage into a struggle for survival. These realities help explain why ghost ship stories emerged so frequently throughout maritime history. The oceans possess a unique ability to conceal information. When a vessel disappears at sea, evidence often disappears with it. Storms erase traces. Currents scatter debris. Vast distances make investigations difficult. Unlike events occurring on land, maritime incidents frequently leave behind only fragments of information. A ship might fail to arrive at its destination. Search efforts may discover nothing. Families, merchants, and authorities are left with questions but few answers. Such circumstances naturally encourage speculation. Human beings seek explanations for uncertainty, and when evidence is limited, stories often fill the gaps. Imagine sailors gathered aboard a ship during a quiet evening, exchanging stories beneath a sky full of stars. Maritime culture has always relied heavily upon storytelling. Sailors carried news, rumors, and legends from one port to another. Tales of storms, shipwrecks, strange lights, and unexplained disappearances spread across oceans long before newspapers or telegraphs connected distant regions. Some stories were accurate. Others became exaggerated through repetition. Yet together they created a rich tradition of maritime folklore. Within that tradition, ghost ships occupied a special place because they combined mystery with visible evidence. Unlike ships that vanished entirely, ghost ships were found. The vessel remained. The crew did not. Imagine the unsettling experience of encountering an abandoned ship at sea. A lookout spots a vessel drifting in the distance. At first, everything appears normal. The sails may still be raised. The hull seems intact. Yet as another ship approaches, something feels wrong. No crew members appear on deck. No signals are exchanged. No movement is visible. Boarding parties sent to investigate discover a ship that appears strangely frozen in time. Personal belongings remain where they were left. Equipment is still aboard. Sometimes food remains prepared. Yet the people who should occupy the vessel have vanished completely. Such discoveries create immediate questions. Why would an entire crew abandon a seaworthy ship? Where did they go? What circumstances could produce such an outcome? Imagine how these questions affected sailors of earlier centuries. Modern audiences often have access to weather records, maritime databases, and scientific explanations. Historical sailors possessed far less information. When they encountered abandoned vessels, they faced genuine mysteries. The ocean provided no easy answers. Every ghost ship, therefore, became a source of fascination. Some inspired practical investigations. Others inspired legends. Many inspired both. Over time, ghost ships became symbols of the unknown aspects of maritime life. They represented the limits of human knowledge in an environment that remained only partially understood. The sea could reveal extraordinary discoveries while withholding crucial explanations. This combination of evidence and uncertainty made ghost ship stories particularly powerful. Imagine the broader historical context in which these mysteries developed. During the Great Age of Sailing, thousands of ships crossed the world's oceans every year. Most voyages ended successfully. Ships arrived in port, unloaded cargo, and departed again. Yet the sheer scale of maritime activity ensured that unusual events would occasionally occur. Some vessels were lost. Some were abandoned. Some were found under circumstances so unusual that they defied easy explanation. These incidents attracted attention precisely because they differed from ordinary experience. The more unusual the circumstances, the more likely the story was to survive. And as the centuries passed, certain ghost ships became famous not because anyone solved their mysteries, but because no one could. Their stories endured because unanswered questions possess a unique power. They invite curiosity repeatedly across generations. They encourage new theories, fresh investigations, and endless speculation. Before we examine the most famous examples, it is worth remembering that ghost ships are not merely legends. They are real vessels discovered under genuinely puzzling circumstances. Behind every story lies an actual ship, an actual crew, and an actual event. The challenge is that the ocean often preserves only part of the story. The rest disappears beyond the horizon, leaving investigators, historians, and sailors to wonder what truly happened aboard the ships nobody could explain. As ghost ship stories spread through maritime communities and became part of seafaring culture, they also revealed something important about the relationship between human beings and the ocean itself. The sea has always occupied a unique place in human imagination because it combines familiarity with mystery. People have sailed across oceans for thousands of years. Trade routes, fishing grounds, and coastal communities created deep connections between humanity and the maritime world. Yet despite that long relationship, vast portions of the ocean remained unknown for much of history. Mariners could navigate across great distances while still possessing only limited understanding of the forces surrounding them. Storms emerged unexpectedly. Currents carried ships into unfamiliar waters. Fog concealed coastlines. Entire vessels vanished without leaving obvious traces. Such conditions created an environment where uncertainty was not an exception but a normal part of life. Ghost ships emerged from this reality. They were not supernatural phenomena in the original sense. Rather, they were evidence that something had occurred beyond the reach of immediate observation. Imagine a merchant ship crossing the Atlantic during the 19th century. Weeks pass without incident. The crew follows established routines. Navigation observations are recorded carefully. Meals are prepared. Equipment is maintained. Then, perhaps because of weather, a navigational concern, a mechanical problem, or some unexpected event, circumstances change. Decisions are made. Actions are taken. Yet because the ship is isolated from the rest of the world, no one beyond the vessel witnesses what happens. If the crew later disappears and the ship is discovered abandoned, investigators inherit only the final scene. They see the result without seeing the process. This challenge lies at the heart of almost every ghost ship mystery. Imagine maritime investigators attempting to reconstruct events from limited evidence. A ship is found drifting. The cargo remains aboard. Personal possessions remain untouched. Lifeboats may be missing, or they may still be present. Logbooks may contain clues, or they may end abruptly. Every detail matters because every detail represents one of the few available pieces of evidence. Investigators examine weather conditions, shipping records, cargo manifests, and witness statements. Yet even thorough investigations sometimes fail to produce definitive answers. The ocean rarely preserves evidence as neatly as a controlled environment on land. Wind, water, and time alter conditions continuously. By the time a ghost ship is discovered, crucial information may already be gone. Imagine how this uncertainty contributed to the growth of maritime legends. Sailors often encountered events they could not fully explain. Human beings naturally seek patterns and narratives. When evidence is incomplete, imagination sometimes fills the gaps. Stories evolve. Details become emphasized. Speculation grows. Over time, practical mysteries acquire legendary qualities. This process does not mean the original event was fictional. Rather, it reflects the difficulty of understanding incidents that occurred in remote environments with few witnesses. Many famous ghost ships began as real maritime investigations before becoming subjects of folklore. Imagine the emotional impact these stories had on sailors themselves. Maritime life already involved significant risks. Stories of abandoned ships served as reminders of those risks. They demonstrated how quickly circumstances could change at sea. A vessel that appeared secure one day might become a mystery the next. Such stories encouraged caution, respect for the ocean, and awareness of uncertainty. At the same time, they provided opportunities for reflection. Ghost ships raised questions not only about what happened, but also about how little people sometimes knew about events occurring beyond their immediate view. Imagine a calm morning on the open ocean. A ship appears in the distance, drifting slowly beneath raised sails. The sea is peaceful. Nothing about the scene suggests violence or disaster. Yet as sailors approach, they discover something deeply unsettling. The vessel is empty. No crew members respond. No explanation is immediately visible. Such scenes challenge expectations because they contradict ordinary assumptions about how ships function. Ships are built to carry people. Finding one without its crew creates an immediate sense of incompleteness. The vessel appears to have lost the very element that gives it purpose. Imagine the centuries during which such discoveries accumulated. Some ghost ships were eventually explained. Others remain uncertain despite extensive research. Together they form a category of maritime history defined not by a single cause but by a shared characteristic: unanswered questions. Each case differs. Weather may play a role in one mystery. Human decisions may dominate another. Mechanical failures, navigational concerns, cargo issues, and environmental conditions all appear in different combinations. There is no single explanation for every ghost ship. What unites them is the challenge they present to investigators attempting to reconstruct events from limited evidence. Imagine standing on the deck of a ship at sunset, watching the horizon fade into darkness. The ocean appears calm, yet beneath that calm surface lies a history filled with voyages, discoveries, successes, disasters, and mysteries. Ghost ships occupy a special place within that history because they remind us of the limits of certainty. Even in an age of advanced technology, the ocean retains an ability to conceal information. The sea is vast. Human observation is limited. Events sometimes occur beyond the reach of immediate understanding. That reality fascinated sailors centuries ago, and it continues to fascinate historians today. As we continue our journey, we will encounter some of the most famous ghost ships ever discovered. We will examine the evidence left behind, explore the investigations that followed, and consider the theories proposed over the years. Yet before we do, it is worth remembering that every mystery begins with a simple fact. Somewhere on the ocean, a ship was found without its crew. The vessel remained. The people did not. And from that single unsettling discovery emerged stories that continue to capture imaginations across generations. Part 2: The Mary Celeste. As we move deeper into the world of maritime mysteries, we arrive at perhaps the most famous ghost ship ever discovered. Among all the abandoned vessels found drifting across the oceans, one name has endured more powerfully than any other. For more than a century and a half, historians, sailors, investigators, and storytellers have returned again and again to the strange case of the Mary Celeste. The mystery has inspired books, documentaries, articles, debates, and countless theories. Some explanations are practical, others are imaginative. Yet despite generations of investigation, the story remains one of the most fascinating maritime puzzles in history. What makes the Mary Celeste so compelling is not merely that the ship was abandoned. Ships have been abandoned before. Rather, it is the combination of circumstances surrounding the discovery. The vessel appeared capable of continuing its voyage. Its cargo remained aboard. Personal possessions were left behind. There were no obvious signs of violence. And yet every person who should have been aboard had vanished. To understand why this case became legendary, we must return to the year 1872 and follow the voyage from the beginning. Imagine the Atlantic world during the late 19th century. Steamships are becoming increasingly common, yet sailing vessels still play an important role in maritime commerce. Trade routes connect continents through a vast network of commercial activity. Ships carry goods, passengers, and information across oceans. Maritime travel remains challenging, but advances in navigation and communication are gradually reducing uncertainty. Against this backdrop, the Mary Celeste prepares for what appears to be a routine commercial voyage. Imagine the ship itself. The Mary Celeste is a brigantine, a two-masted sailing vessel designed for efficiency and long-distance travel. It is neither the largest nor the most famous ship of its era. To contemporary observers, there is nothing especially remarkable about it. The vessel has a history of ordinary commercial service. It exists within the familiar rhythms of maritime trade. Nothing suggests that it will soon become one of the most discussed ships in history. Imagine the preparations for departure. Cargo is loaded carefully. Supplies are organized. Navigation charts are reviewed. Crew members settle into their responsibilities. The captain, Benjamin Spooner Briggs, is an experienced mariner with a strong professional reputation. His wife and young daughter accompany him on the voyage, a practice not entirely unusual during the period. The crew consists of capable sailors familiar with maritime life. Everything about the departure appears normal. Imagine the Mary Celeste leaving port and beginning its Atlantic crossing. The destination lies far beyond the horizon. The voyage follows established commercial routes. Days pass according to familiar maritime routines. Sails are adjusted. Navigation observations are recorded. Meals are prepared. The ship moves steadily through open water. From every available perspective, the voyage appears uneventful. Imagine the ocean during these weeks. Weather conditions vary as they always do. Some days bring calm seas. Others bring stronger winds. Yet nothing in the surviving records suggests a catastrophic storm or major emergency during the early stages of the journey. The crew continues performing ordinary duties. The captain maintains records. Life aboard follows predictable patterns. Then, at some point, something changes. The challenge is that no one knows exactly what that change was. Imagine another ship crossing the Atlantic during the same period. This vessel, named the Dei Gratia, follows its own course through the ocean. Like the Mary Celeste, it is engaged in ordinary maritime activity. Its crew expects a routine voyage. Yet on December 4, 1872, lookouts aboard the Dei Gratia notice something unusual on the horizon. A ship appears to be sailing erratically. Its movements seem strange. There is no immediate indication of disaster, but something feels wrong. Imagine the growing curiosity among the crew of the Dei Gratia. Ships encountering one another at sea often exchange signals or display visible activity. Yet the distant vessel behaves differently. Observations continue. The unusual behavior becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. Eventually, the decision is made to investigate more closely. The approaching ship is identified as the Mary Celeste. Imagine the boarding party crossing from the Dei Gratia to the Mary Celeste. Such inspections require caution because the circumstances remain unclear. Perhaps the crew is ill. Perhaps equipment has failed. Perhaps assistance is needed. Countless possibilities exist. Yet as the boarding party steps aboard the vessel, they encounter a scene that immediately raises questions. The ship is empty. No crew members appear. No captain responds. No family members emerge from the cabins. The Mary Celeste has been abandoned. Imagine the investigators moving carefully through the ship. Every detail attracts attention because every detail may provide clues. The cargo remains aboard. Valuable items have not been stolen. Personal belongings are still present. Food supplies remain available. The vessel shows signs of wear consistent with an Atlantic voyage, but there is no obvious evidence of a catastrophic event. Most importantly, there are no clear indications of violence. The scene appears strangely ordinary. The ship seems capable of sailing. Yet the people who should occupy it are gone. Imagine the questions forming immediately. Why would an experienced captain abandon a vessel that still appears seaworthy? Why would he leave behind cargo, possessions, and supplies? Why would an entire crew disappear without leaving an obvious explanation? The mystery begins the moment investigators realize that the evidence does not fit familiar expectations. Abandoned ships are unusual enough. Abandoned ships under apparently manageable conditions are far more difficult to explain. Imagine standing on the deck of the Mary Celeste during that first inspection. The Atlantic stretches endlessly around the vessel. The sails move gently in the wind. Equipment remains in place. The ship feels inhabited and empty simultaneously. It resembles a stage after a performance has ended, with every object still present but every person gone. Such scenes possess a unique power because they suggest a story without revealing it completely. The Mary Celeste becomes famous not because investigators found answers, but because they found questions. And those questions would continue echoing through maritime history for generations to come. As the crew of the Dei Grazia continues examining the abandoned Mary Celeste and attempts to understand what has happened aboard the mysterious vessel drifting alone in the Atlantic, the full strangeness of the situation begins to emerge. Maritime history contains many unusual incidents, but the Mary Celeste presents investigators with a particularly difficult challenge because the available evidence seems contradictory. Normally, shipwrecks leave signs of damage. Violent events leave signs of struggle. Piracy leaves signs of theft. Severe storms leave visible traces. Yet the Mary Celeste does not fit comfortably into any of these categories. The ship appears abandoned, but not destroyed. Disordered, but not chaotic. Concerning, but not catastrophic. This combination of observations transforms an ordinary maritime investigation into one of history's greatest mysteries. Imagine the boarding party moving methodically through the vessel. Every cabin receives attention. Every compartment is inspected. Investigators understand that details matter. A misplaced object, a damaged piece of equipment, or an unusual observation might provide crucial information. Yet the more thoroughly they examine the ship, the more difficult the puzzle becomes. Valuable cargo remains aboard. Personal possessions have not been removed systematically. The vessel contains many of the things people would normally take if abandoning ship permanently. Such observations complicate efforts to reconstruct events. Imagine the captain's cabin. Personal belongings remain present. Documents and navigation materials are examined carefully. The crew of the Dei Grazia searches for clues regarding the final days of the voyage. Logbooks and records often provide valuable information because they document conditions, decisions, and observations. Yet even here, certainty remains elusive. The surviving records do not reveal a dramatic crisis. They suggest a voyage that was progressing normally until communication suddenly stops. The narrative ends before the mystery begins. Imagine the cargo stored within the ship. The Mary Celeste carried industrial alcohol packed in barrels, a legitimate commercial cargo intended for delivery. At first glance, the cargo appears largely intact. There is no obvious sign that the vessel has been looted or deliberately sabotaged. Yet cargo can influence maritime decisions in complex ways. Investigators note every detail because understanding the cargo may help explain the crew's actions. At this stage, however, no single observation provides a complete answer. Imagine the condition of the ship itself. The vessel is not in perfect shape. Some water is present within the hull, as was common on many sailing ships of the era. Certain pieces of equipment show wear. The ship has clearly experienced the normal challenges associated with an Atlantic crossing. Yet these conditions do not appear severe enough to justify abandoning a vessel entirely. Experienced sailors routinely managed similar situations. This discrepancy becomes central to the mystery. The evidence suggests concern, but perhaps not desperation. Imagine the missing lifeboat. Investigators eventually determine that the ship's small boat is no longer aboard. This observation carries significant implications because it suggests the crew left intentionally rather than simply vanishing. If they entered the lifeboat, they likely believed they faced some form of danger. Yet why would they make such a decision while leaving behind a vessel that still appeared capable of remaining afloat? The question becomes one of the most important aspects of the investigation. Imagine the reaction of maritime authorities receiving reports about the discovery. News of abandoned ships always attracts attention because such incidents are inherently unusual. The circumstances surrounding the Mary Celeste prove especially intriguing. Authorities must determine what happened, whether any crime occurred, and what should be done with the vessel. Investigations begin. Witnesses are interviewed. Evidence is reviewed. Yet the passage of time and the absence of surviving crew members complicate every effort. Imagine newspapers reporting the story to a wider audience. Public fascination develops quickly because the case contains elements that capture imagination naturally. A ship discovered adrift. An experienced captain. A missing crew. No clear explanation. Such stories encourage speculation because they resist simple conclusions. Readers discuss possibilities. Journalists propose theories. The mystery begins spreading far beyond maritime circles. Imagine the various explanations emerging during the early stages of investigation. Some observers suspect piracy despite the lack of stolen cargo. Others consider mutiny. Still others wonder whether weather conditions played a role. Each theory attempts to account for the available evidence. Yet each encounters difficulties. Certain observations support one possibility while contradicting another. The Mary Celeste becomes famous precisely because no explanation satisfies every question completely. Imagine the emotional dimension of the mystery. Behind every ghost ship story are real people whose lives were affected by the event. Captain Briggs, his family, and the crew were not fictional characters. They were individuals undertaking what appeared to be an ordinary voyage. Their disappearance transformed them into historical figures, yet it also left families without answers. Maritime mysteries often involve this combination of public fascination and personal tragedy. Imagine standing aboard the Mary Celeste after the initial inspection is complete. The Atlantic stretches toward every horizon. The ship drifts quietly across the water. The evidence has been examined. The obvious observations have been recorded. Yet the central question remains unanswered. What happened to the people who sailed this vessel? The ship offers clues, but not conclusions. It preserves fragments of a story without revealing the ending. Imagine how this uncertainty contributes to the case's enduring power. Many mysteries fade once explanations emerge. The Mary Celeste survives because certainty remains elusive. Generations of historians, investigators, and researchers continue examining the evidence, searching for overlooked details or new interpretations. Some theories appear more plausible than others, yet absolute proof remains absent. The ship occupies a unique position within maritime history. It is one of the most investigated ghost ships ever discovered, and yet it remains one of the least conclusively explained. As the years pass, the Mary Celeste will become more than an abandoned vessel. It will become a symbol of the ocean's ability to preserve mysteries. And in the next segment, we will follow the investigators, theories, and debates that transformed a single abandoned ship into one of the most famous unsolved maritime puzzles in the world. Part 3: Searching for Answers. As news of the abandoned Mary Celeste spreads across the Atlantic world and maritime authorities begin examining the evidence left behind aboard the vessel, the mystery enters a new phase. The discovery itself was remarkable, but what followed would ultimately make the case famous. Many maritime incidents are investigated, explained, and eventually forgotten. The Mary Celeste followed a different path because every answer seemed to create new questions. The ship had been found. The cargo remained aboard. Valuable possessions had not been systematically removed. There were no obvious signs of violence, piracy, or catastrophic damage. Yet Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife, his young daughter, and every member of the crew had vanished. Investigators faced a challenge familiar to anyone attempting to reconstruct historical events from incomplete evidence. They possessed the ending of the story but not the middle. The ship represented a final scene frozen in time, while the crucial events leading to that scene remained hidden somewhere beyond the reach of direct observation. Imagine maritime officials receiving reports concerning the discovery. Their responsibilities extend beyond curiosity. Commercial shipping depends upon confidence, predictability, and trust. Unexplained incidents attract attention because they challenge those qualities. Authorities therefore examine the Mary Celeste carefully. Witness statements are collected. Observations from the crew of the Dei Grazia are recorded. The condition of the ship is documented. Every available piece of information becomes important because there are so few pieces available. Maritime investigations often depend upon assembling small details into larger patterns. Imagine the legal proceedings that follow the discovery. During the 19th century, maritime law included provisions concerning salvage rights. A vessel found abandoned at sea represented not only a mystery but also a legal matter. The crew of the Dei Grazia expected compensation for recovering the Mary Celeste and bringing it safely to port. Before such compensation could be determined, authorities needed to understand whether any wrongdoing had occurred. As a result, official inquiries became surprisingly detailed. Investigators questioned witnesses extensively. They examined the ship for signs of foul play. They considered possibilities that today may seem unlikely but which appeared plausible at the time. Imagine the atmosphere surrounding these inquiries. Newspapers follow developments closely. Maritime communities discuss the case continuously. Every new detail attracts attention because the circumstances are so unusual. The public wants explanations. Authorities want explanations. Yet explanations prove difficult to produce. The evidence refuses to cooperate neatly with familiar assumptions. Instead of pointing clearly toward one conclusion, it supports multiple possibilities while confirming none of them completely. Imagine investigators standing aboard the Mary Celeste during inspections. They move through cabins, examine equipment, and review documents. Certain observations appear meaningful. A navigational instrument may be missing. The ship's lifeboat is gone. Some water is present in the hold. Yet none of these details independently explains why an experienced captain would abandon a vessel that remained afloat. Maritime professionals understand that sailors sometimes leave ships under extreme circumstances. The challenge lies in identifying what those circumstances might have been. Imagine one of the earliest theories proposed following the discovery. Some observers suspect mutiny. The idea appears reasonable initially because mutiny has occurred throughout maritime history. A crew could potentially turn against its captain and seize control of a vessel. Yet closer examination reveals difficulties. There are no obvious signs of violence. The cargo remains aboard. Personal belongings remain largely untouched. If mutiny occurred, why abandon the ship afterward? The theory raises as many questions as it answers. Imagine another possibility receiving attention. Piracy. The Atlantic world still remembers stories of maritime crime. Perhaps pirates intercepted the Mary Celeste, removed the crew, and left the vessel adrift. Yet this explanation also encounters problems. Pirates generally seek valuables. The cargo remains aboard. Personal possessions remain aboard. Nothing suggests systematic theft. The evidence simply does not fit comfortably with known patterns of piracy. Imagine weather becoming a focus of investigation. Storms frequently influence maritime decisions. Perhaps severe conditions convinced Captain Briggs that remaining aboard the vessel was too dangerous. Yet if weather played a role, why did the ship survive relatively intact? Why abandon it rather than attempt repairs or continue sailing? Maritime history contains many examples of vessels enduring storms far worse than those apparently experienced by the Mary Celeste. Again, the evidence provides clues without certainty. Imagine investigators considering mechanical or navigational concerns. Ships are complex systems. Small problems can sometimes create larger emergencies. Perhaps Captain Briggs believed the vessel was sinking. Perhaps he feared an explosion related to the cargo. Perhaps navigational confusion contributed to poor decisions. Such possibilities possess a degree of plausibility because they involve ordinary maritime risks rather than extraordinary events. Yet direct proof remains absent. Imagine the frustration experienced by those attempting to solve the case. Historical investigations often succeed because evidence accumulates gradually. Witnesses provide information. Documents reveal new details. Physical traces support conclusions. The Mary Celeste offers very little of this. The central witnesses, the captain, family, and crew are missing. No definitive record explains their actions. The ship itself contains only fragments of information. Investigators are forced to interpret rather than confirm. Imagine how this uncertainty affects public imagination. Human beings often find unanswered questions more compelling than solved ones. Every gap in the evidence becomes an invitation to speculate. Journalists propose explanations. Readers debate possibilities. Maritime communities exchange theories. The mystery begins evolving beyond the original investigation. It becomes a story capable of sustaining interest precisely because it lacks a definitive conclusion. Imagine years passing while discussions continue. New generations encounter the case and review the same evidence. Some theories fade. Others gain popularity. Yet none achieves universal acceptance. The Mary Celeste gradually transforms from a maritime incident into a cultural phenomenon. The abandoned ship becomes a symbol of unexplained disappearance. It represents the ocean's ability to conceal crucial information. It reminds observers that even careful investigations sometimes encounter limits. Imagine standing aboard the vessel once more, long after the initial discovery. The physical evidence remains unchanged. The questions remain unchanged. Yet the mystery has grown larger because people continue engaging with it. The Mary Celeste has become more than a ship. It has become a puzzle that resists completion, and that resistance ensures its survival within history. The investigation may have begun with the hope of finding answers, but it ultimately revealed something else. Sometimes the ocean preserves mysteries more effectively than explanations. As the decades pass following the discovery of the Mary Celeste and generations of historians, maritime experts, writers, and investigators continue revisiting the case. The mystery evolves into something larger than the original event itself. What began as an abandoned ship found adrift in the Atlantic becomes one of the most famous unsolved stories in maritime history. The reason for this transformation lies not only in the evidence, but also in the unusual balance between what is known and what remains uncertain. Many historical mysteries survive because information is scarce. The Mary Celeste is different. Investigators possess a considerable amount of information. They know where the ship departed. They know its destination. They know who was aboard. They know the condition in which it was discovered. Yet despite these facts, the crucial question remains unanswered. What convinced every person aboard to leave a vessel that appeared capable of continuing its voyage? Imagine historians returning repeatedly to the surviving records. They examine testimony from the crew of the Dei Grazia. They review official reports. They compare weather data, navigational information, and maritime practices of the period. Each generation brings new methods and perspectives. Researchers search for overlooked details. They ask fresh questions. Yet the evidence remains fundamentally the same. The ship was found abandoned. The people were gone. Everything else must be inferred from those basic facts. Imagine one of the most widely discussed theories emerging over time. Some researchers suggest that Captain Briggs may have feared an explosion related to the ship's cargo of industrial alcohol. Certain barrels were later discovered to be empty, leading to speculation that fumes may have accumulated within the hold. Perhaps a sudden release of vapor created sounds or conditions that seemed threatening. Perhaps Briggs ordered a temporary evacuation while intending to return once the danger passed. If weather or circumstance then separated the lifeboat from the ship, a tragic accident could explain the disappearance. This theory appeals to many investigators because it relies upon ordinary maritime concerns rather than extraordinary events. Yet certainty remains impossible because direct evidence is lacking. Imagine alternative explanations receiving attention. Some researchers focus on navigational concerns. Others emphasize weather conditions. A few consider the possibility of human error during a moment of crisis. Each theory attempts to account for the available observations while minimizing contradictions. Yet every explanation encounters limitations. Some details fit well. Others remain difficult to explain. The mystery survives because no theory answers every question completely. Imagine how popular culture influences public perceptions of the case. Over the years, writers, journalists, and storytellers often embellish details to increase dramatic impact. New elements are added. Ordinary observations become more mysterious. Some accounts describe meals left untouched on tables, though evidence for such claims is limited. Others suggest supernatural possibilities unsupported by historical records. The distinction between documented fact and later invention becomes increasingly important. Serious researchers must separate original evidence from accumulated mythology. Imagine the challenge of doing so. Once a story enters popular culture, it begins evolving independently of historical documentation. Readers remember dramatic details more easily than cautious conclusions. As a result, the Mary Celeste acquires a reputation even stranger than the original case. Historians therefore face two tasks simultaneously. They must investigate the event itself while also examining how the story changed over time. Both subjects prove fascinating. Imagine maritime experts evaluating the actions of Captain Briggs. Professional sailors often approach the mystery differently than casual observers. They recognize that abandoning a ship is among the most serious decisions a captain can make. Such decisions are not taken lightly. If Briggs ordered the crew into the lifeboat, he likely believed a genuine threat existed. The challenge lies in identifying that threat. Maritime professionals therefore focus less on sensational possibilities and more on practical circumstances that could influence decision-making at sea. Imagine the ocean itself as an active participant in the mystery. Unlike incidents occurring on land, maritime events take place within environments that erase evidence continuously. Waves alter conditions. Weather changes rapidly. Objects drift. Debris disappears. By the time investigators encounter a ship, crucial information may already be gone. This reality affects every ghost ship case, but it is especially significant for the Mary Celeste because so much depends upon understanding events that occurred before discovery. Imagine the broader significance of the mystery. The Mary Celeste endures not because it is necessarily the strangest maritime incident ever recorded, but because it illustrates the limits of certainty. Modern audiences often expect investigations to produce definitive conclusions. The Mary Celeste reminds us that history does not always cooperate. Sometimes evidence survives incompletely. Sometimes witnesses disappear. Sometimes questions remain open despite sincere efforts to answer them. The case, therefore, serves as a valuable lesson about historical inquiry itself. Imagine standing on the deck of a ship crossing the Atlantic today. Modern technology provides tools unavailable to 19th century sailors. Satellites monitor movements. Radio communication connects vessels instantly. Weather forecasting reduces uncertainty. Yet the ocean remains vast. Events can still occur beyond immediate observation. The fundamental challenge faced by investigators of the Mary Celeste has not disappeared entirely. Human understanding continues to encounter limits when confronting complex events in remote environments. Imagine the enduring fascination of the case. More than a century after the ship was discovered, people still discuss it. Researchers still publish analyses. Documentaries still revisit the evidence. The mystery continues attracting attention because it occupies a unique space between explanation and uncertainty. Several theories appear plausible. None can be proven conclusively. The result is a story that invites participation. Every generation can examine the evidence and reach its own conclusions. Imagine the Mary Celeste drifting quietly through history, much as it once drifted through the Atlantic. The ship itself eventually disappeared from the world, but its mystery survived. It became the benchmark against which other ghost ships would be measured. Whenever abandoned vessels are discovered, comparisons inevitably arise. The Mary Celeste established the template for maritime mysteries. A ship found without its crew, evidence that suggests explanations without confirming them, and questions that refuse to disappear. The investigation may never produce absolute certainty. Yet perhaps that uncertainty is precisely why the story endures. The Mary Celeste remains one of history's most famous ghost ships because it reminds us that some mysteries are not remembered despite lacking answers. They are remembered because they lack answers. And in the vast history of the world's oceans, few examples demonstrate that truth more clearly than the abandoned ship that continues to puzzle investigators nearly a century and a half after its crew vanished beyond the horizon. Part 4: The Carol A. Deering. As the story of the Mary Celeste settles into maritime history and becomes the standard against which many later ghost ship mysteries are measured, the oceans continue producing new puzzles. The 19th century passes into the 20th. Technology advances. Communication improves. Steamships become increasingly common. Navigation grows more reliable. Yet despite these developments, the sea remains capable of creating mysteries that challenge investigators just as profoundly as those that came before. Among the most famous of these later cases is the strange story of the Carol A. Deering, an American schooner discovered abandoned under circumstances that would spark decades of speculation. Like the Mary Celeste, the vessel was found without its crew. Like the Mary Celeste, investigators examined every available clue. And like the Mary Celeste, no single explanation would ever satisfy everyone who studied the case. To understand why the Carol A. Deering became one of the most famous ghost ships of the 20th century, we must first understand the world in which it sailed and the final voyage that brought it into maritime legend. Imagine the early 1920s. The world is changing rapidly. The First World War has recently ended. Nations are rebuilding. Global trade is expanding once again. Steam-powered vessels dominate many shipping routes, yet large sailing ships still operate in certain industries. Among these vessels is the Carol A. Deering, a 5-masted schooner built for commercial service. It is a large and impressive ship, designed to carry cargo efficiently across long distances. To those who see it leaving port, It appears to be another ordinary participant in the vast network of maritime commerce. Nothing suggests that it will soon become the subject of one of the most enduring mysteries in American maritime history. Imagine the schooner at sea during one of its final voyages. The vessel moves steadily through Atlantic waters beneath towering sails. The crew follows established routines. Navigation is monitored carefully. Equipment is maintained. Meals are prepared. Maritime life unfolds according to familiar patterns. Yet beneath this appearance of normality, tensions may already exist. Historical accounts suggest disagreements between Captain William Merritt and certain members of the crew during earlier phases of the ship's service. Personnel changes occurred. Responsibilities shifted. Such circumstances were not unheard of in maritime life, but they remind us that ships are communities as well as machines. Human relationships often influence events in ways that are difficult to reconstruct later. Imagine the Carol A. Deering sailing southward and eventually preparing for its return voyage. Ports are visited. Cargo operations proceed. The schooner continues fulfilling its commercial purpose. Crew members perform their duties as they have countless times before. Yet somewhere during this period, the chain of events leading to the mystery begins. Unfortunately for future investigators, that chain is largely hidden from view. Like many maritime mysteries, the crucial events occur beyond the reach of direct observation. Imagine the Atlantic Ocean during the winter of 1921. Weather conditions vary. Coastal waters present challenges familiar to generations of sailors. Currents shift. Winds change direction. Navigation requires constant attention. The sea remains an environment where small problems can grow unexpectedly. The Carol A. Deering continues its voyage through these conditions. To distant observers, it appears to be another vessel making its way across familiar routes. Imagine lighthouse keepers and other maritime observers noticing the schooner as it approaches the eastern coast of the United States. Such observations become important later because they provide some of the last known glimpses of the ship before the mystery unfolds fully. Witnesses report unusual details. Certain behaviors aboard the vessel seem slightly out of place. Yet isolated observations rarely reveal complete stories. At the time, nothing appears dramatic enough to trigger immediate alarm. The ship continues moving. The voyage appears ongoing. Imagine the waters off the coast of North Carolina, a region long associated with maritime challenges. The area known as the Outer Banks has earned a reputation over centuries for shipwrecks, shifting sandbars, and difficult navigation. Sailors respect these waters because they combine natural beauty with significant hazards. Countless vessels have encountered trouble here. The Carol A. Deering is now approaching this environment. Imagine dawn breaking over the Atlantic on January 31st, 1921. The sea stretches toward the horizon. Along the coast, observers notice something unusual. A large schooner has run aground on Diamond Shoals near Cape Hatteras. At first, such incidents are not entirely unprecedented. Ships occasionally become stranded. Rescue efforts can often resolve the situation. Yet as attention focuses on the vessel, a more troubling reality emerges. Something is wrong aboard the Carol A. Deering. Imagine rescue personnel and investigators attempting to approach the stranded schooner. Conditions make immediate boarding difficult. Waves break around the vessel. Access is limited. Yet even from a distance, observers notice an unsettling detail. No crew members are visible. There are no signals requesting assistance. No one appears on deck. The ship seems abandoned. Imagine the growing curiosity and concern surrounding the discovery. When investigators eventually gain access to the vessel, they encounter a scene that raises more questions than answers. The ship itself remains present. Equipment remains aboard, yet the crew is gone. Every officer, every sailor, every person who should be aboard has vanished. The Carol A. Deering has become a ghost ship. Imagine moving through the vessel during the initial investigation. Certain observations stand out immediately. Personal belongings remain. Some equipment appears undisturbed. Yet other details suggest unusual activity. Navigational instruments are missing. Important records are absent. The evidence seems fragmented, pointing in multiple directions simultaneously. Every clue appears significant, yet none provides a complete explanation. Imagine the reaction of maritime authorities confronted with this mystery. An abandoned schooner stranded off the American coast naturally attracts attention. Investigations begin. Witnesses are interviewed. Reports are collected. The public becomes fascinated. Newspapers cover developments extensively. The disappearance of an entire crew under unclear circumstances creates precisely the kind of story that captures imagination. Yet unlike fictional mysteries, real investigations must work within the limits of available evidence. And in the case of the Carol A. Deering, those limits prove frustratingly severe. Imagine standing aboard the stranded schooner as waves crash against nearby shoals. The ship remains physically present, offering investigators a tangible scene to examine. Yet the most important element is missing. The people who could explain what happened are gone. Their absence transforms an ordinary maritime incident into one of the most famous ghost ship mysteries of the 20th century. The vessel has been found. The crew has not. And as investigators begin searching for answers, they discover that every clue seems to deepen the mystery rather than solve it. As investigators begin the difficult task of understanding what happened aboard the Carol A. Deering and why an apparently capable vessel ended up stranded on Diamond Shoals without a single crew member remaining aboard, the case quickly expands beyond a simple maritime incident. The disappearance occurs during a period when public interest in mysteries, conspiracies, and unusual events is growing. Newspapers report new developments eagerly. Maritime authorities pursue multiple lines of inquiry. Witness statements are examined carefully. Yet despite these efforts, certainty remains elusive from the very beginning. Like many ghost ship cases, the Carol A. Deering presents investigators with an unusual combination of evidence and absence. The ship itself remains available for inspection. The crew does not. As a result, every theory must be constructed from fragments rather than complete information. Imagine investigators boarding the stranded schooner for the first time once conditions allow closer examination. The vessel sits trapped upon the shoals, exposed to wind, waves, and the relentless movement of the Atlantic. Time matters because environmental conditions can alter evidence rapidly. Every observation must therefore be documented carefully. Investigators move through the ship methodically, searching for signs that might reveal the crew's fate. Yet the scene resists easy interpretation. Certain aspects appear ordinary, others appear unusual. Together they create a puzzle that proves remarkably difficult to solve. Imagine the condition of the crew's quarters. Personal belongings remain aboard, suggesting that any departure may have occurred unexpectedly. Yet some important items are missing. Navigational equipment cannot be found. Certain records are absent. These details attract immediate attention because they imply deliberate actions rather than sudden disappearance. If the crew left the vessel voluntarily, why did they leave? If they were forced to leave, by whom or by what? Every possibility seems to generate additional questions. Imagine investigators reviewing witness reports gathered before the ship ran aground. Several observations suggest that something unusual may have been occurring aboard the vessel during its final days. One lighthouse keeper reports seeing a man aboard who did not appear to match descriptions of the ship's captain. Another observer notes behavior that seems inconsistent with ordinary maritime procedures. Such accounts become important because they represent some of the last known observations of the schooner while it remained operational. Yet witness testimony is rarely perfect. Details may be misunderstood. Distances may affect accuracy. Investigators must therefore evaluate each report cautiously. Imagine the broader context in which the mystery unfolds. The early 1920s are a period of significant social and political change. Concerns about crime, smuggling, labor unrest, and international tensions influence public thinking. As a result, theories surrounding the Carol A. Deering quickly expand beyond ordinary maritime explanations. Some observers suspect mutiny. Others consider piracy. Still others propose connections to criminal organizations. The mystery becomes a canvas upon which contemporary anxieties are projected. Imagine one of the most widely discussed theories: mutiny. Maritime history contains examples of crews rebelling against captains. The possibility, therefore, cannot be dismissed automatically. Reports of disagreements aboard the vessel seem to support this line of inquiry. Perhaps tensions escalated. Perhaps control of the ship changed hands. Yet even if mutiny occurred, major questions remain unanswered. Why abandon the vessel afterward? What became of the crew? Why was no definitive evidence discovered? The theory explains certain observations while leaving others unresolved. Imagine another possibility attracting attention. During this era, concerns about piracy and criminal activity remain present in public imagination. Could the crew have encountered hostile forces at sea? Could smugglers or criminals have become involved somehow? Such ideas generate considerable interest because they provide dramatic narratives. Yet investigators struggle to identify concrete evidence supporting these scenarios. Once again, speculation exceeds certainty. Imagine maritime experts examining environmental factors. The waters surrounding Cape Hatteras have challenged sailors for centuries. Strong currents, shifting shoals, unpredictable weather, and navigational difficulties create genuine hazards. Perhaps a combination of circumstances forced the crew into lifeboats. Perhaps they expected rescue and never reached safety. Such explanations possess practical advantages because they rely upon known maritime risks rather than extraordinary events. Yet direct evidence remains limited. Imagine the frustration experienced by investigators attempting to connect individual clues into a coherent narrative. Every piece of evidence seems meaningful when viewed independently. Yet assembling those pieces into a complete story proves extraordinarily difficult. The missing crew cannot provide testimony. The final hours of the voyage remain unobserved. Critical information simply does not exist. The investigation, therefore, becomes an exercise in probability rather than certainty. Imagine newspapers reporting each new development to a fascinated public. The mystery captures attention because it combines familiar elements with unanswered questions. An abandoned ship is tangible. It can be photographed, inspected, and discussed. Yet the disappearance of the crew introduces uncertainty. Readers follow the story because they expect eventual resolution. Instead, they encounter ambiguity. The longer the mystery remains unsolved, the more intriguing it becomes. Imagine the years passing after the initial investigation. Certain theories lose popularity. Others continue attracting support. Researchers revisit the evidence repeatedly. Historians examine contemporary reports. Maritime experts evaluate practical explanations. Yet despite decades of analysis, no consensus emerges. The Carol A. Deering joins the Mary Celeste among the ranks of famous ghost ships whose stories resist definitive conclusions. Imagine standing once more aboard the stranded schooner as waves roll across the Atlantic nearby. The ship appears substantial and real. Its decks, cabins, and equipment provide evidence that something happened. Yet evidence alone cannot always reveal complete stories. The crew remains absent. Their fate remains uncertain. The mystery survives because the most important facts disappeared along with the people who knew them. And so the Carol A. Deering enters maritime history not as a solved case, but as a question. A ship was found. The crew was gone. Investigators searched for answers. Theories emerged. Yet the ocean kept its secrets. Even today, more than a century later, the abandoned schooner remains one of the most famous examples of a ghost ship that nobody could fully explain. Part 5: The Bachimo. As the mystery of the Carol A. Deering settles into maritime history and joins the growing collection of ghost ship stories that continue to puzzle investigators, another vessel begins creating a legend unlike any other. Most ghost ships become famous because they are discovered abandoned once. The ship we explore now became famous because it refused to disappear. It was abandoned. It was declared lost. And yet it continued returning again and again, appearing unexpectedly across the frozen waters of the Arctic for decades. Sailors reported sightings. Hunters encountered it in remote regions. Explorers described seeing it drifting silently through ice-covered seas. The vessel became known as one of the most extraordinary ghost ships ever recorded, not because nobody knew where it was, but because nobody seemed able to explain how it kept surviving. This was the story of the Bachimo, the wandering ship of the Arctic. Unlike many maritime mysteries, the Bachimo's story begins not in warm Atlantic waters, but in one of the harshest environments on Earth. To understand why its legend became so powerful, we must first journey north into a world of ice, isolation, and extraordinary challenges. Imagine the Arctic during the early 20th century. Vast stretches of frozen ocean extend toward the horizon. Temperatures fall far below freezing. Ice forms intricate patterns across the sea. Storms emerge suddenly. Visibility changes rapidly. For much of the year, darkness dominates large portions of the region. Maritime travel in such an environment requires exceptional preparation because the Arctic operates according to conditions unlike those found in most other parts of the world. Ships entering these waters face dangers that extend far beyond ordinary navigation. Ice can trap vessels for months. Weather can isolate crews completely. Rescue opportunities remain limited. The Arctic rewards caution and punishes mistakes. Imagine the Bachimo during its early years of service. Built in the early 20th century, the vessel was designed for commercial operations and eventually became involved in trading activities associated with northern regions. It was a sturdy steam-powered cargo ship, capable of operating in difficult conditions. Over time, it developed a reputation as a reliable working vessel. To those who sailed aboard it, the Bachimo represented a practical tool for transportation and commerce. Nothing about its early career suggested that it would one day become one of the most famous ghost ships in maritime history. Imagine the vessel moving through Arctic waters during routine voyages. Ice surrounds portions of the ship. Cold winds sweep across the decks. Crew members perform their duties while remaining constantly aware of environmental conditions. Maritime life in the Arctic differs significantly from life in more temperate regions. Every task becomes more challenging. Equipment must withstand extreme temperatures. Navigation requires continuous attention because ice conditions can change unexpectedly. Yet despite these difficulties, ships like the Bachimo continued operating because northern trade routes remained important. Imagine the year 1931. The Bachimo is undertaking another voyage through Arctic waters. At first, conditions appear manageable. The crew follows familiar routines. The ship progresses through northern passages. Yet as the season advances, environmental conditions begin changing. Arctic ice becomes increasingly dangerous. Navigational challenges intensify. The HMO enters a situation that many vessels operating in the region feared, becoming trapped by ice. Imagine the ship surrounded gradually by expanding fields of frozen ocean. Movement becomes more difficult. Progress slows. Decisions become increasingly important. Arctic mariners understand that timing matters enormously. Remaining too long in certain areas can result in entrapment. Once a vessel becomes locked within sea ice, options narrow dramatically. The HMO and its crew now face precisely this challenge. Imagine days passing while the situation deteriorates. Ice continues strengthening its grip on the vessel. Weather conditions complicate efforts to escape. The crew works diligently, yet environmental forces remain overwhelming. Eventually, company officials and crew members conclude that circumstances have become unsustainable. Difficult decisions must be made. The possibility of abandoning the ship enters serious consideration. Imagine the emotional impact of such a choice. Ships often become more than machinery to those who work aboard them. They function as homes, workplaces, and communities. Leaving a vessel behind is rarely done lightly. Yet Arctic conditions sometimes create circumstances where practical realities override personal attachment. The HMO appears doomed. Ice has claimed many ships throughout history. Most never return. Imagine the crew gathering essential supplies and preparing to leave. The process occurs methodically because survival depends upon careful planning. Personal belongings are collected. Important items are secured. Arrangements are made for transportation away from the increasingly vulnerable vessel. The HMO is effectively abandoned. Those responsible for it assume that nature will complete the process. The Arctic appears ready to destroy the ship. Imagine the crew departing and looking back toward the vessel. The HMO remains trapped within the ice, isolated in one of the harshest environments on Earth. The assumption seems reasonable. The ship will likely be crushed, sunk, or rendered unusable. Maritime history contains countless examples of vessels meeting such fates. Few people expect to see the HMO again. Imagine weeks passing after the abandonment. Weather conditions remain severe. Arctic forces continue reshaping the environment. Then reports begin emerging. The HMO has not disappeared. In fact, it has been seen again. Somehow the vessel has escaped complete destruction. It continues drifting through northern waters. At first, such sightings may seem unusual but not necessarily extraordinary. Ships occasionally survive longer than expected. Yet what follows transforms the HMO into a legend. Imagine hunters traveling through remote Arctic regions months later. They encounter an abandoned ship drifting through icy waters. The vessel appears weathered but recognizable. It is the HMO. No crew members are aboard. No one controls its movements. Yet it continues existing. The ship that should have vanished remains stubbornly present. Imagine additional sightings occurring over the following years. Different observers encounter the vessel in different locations. Sometimes it appears trapped in ice. Sometimes it drifts freely. Occasionally people board it. They find no crew, no signs of permanent habitation, only an abandoned ship continuing its strange journey through the Arctic. The HMO begins acquiring a reputation unlike any other vessel. It is not merely abandoned. It is wandering. Imagine the growing fascination surrounding these reports. Most ghost ships are discovered once. The HMO is discovered repeatedly. Every new sighting raises questions. How has the vessel survived? Why has it not sunk? Where will it appear next? The ship seems determined to resist the fate everyone expected. It becomes a maritime mystery not because of a single unexplained event, but because it continues creating new mysteries every time it reappears. And as the years pass, the wandering ghost of the Arctic will become one of the most extraordinary legends ever associated with an abandoned ship. As reports of the Bachimo continue appearing across the Arctic throughout the 1930s and beyond, the ship gradually transforms from an abandoned cargo vessel into something approaching maritime folklore. The circumstances surrounding its survival are remarkable enough on their own. Most ships abandoned in such extreme environments eventually disappear. Ice crushes them, storms damage them, time and weather complete their destruction. Yet the Bachimo refuses to follow that pattern. Instead, it continues drifting through Arctic waters year after year, appearing unexpectedly before hunters, traders, explorers, and travelers who often cannot believe what they are seeing. Each sighting reinforces the legend. Each reappearance makes the story more difficult to ignore. The abandoned vessel becomes one of the most persistent maritime mysteries ever recorded. Imagine the Arctic during the years following the ship's abandonment. Seasons change dramatically. Winter brings darkness and severe cold. Summer introduces periods of open water and increased visibility. Ice expands and contracts according to environmental conditions. Throughout these cycles, the Bachimo somehow survives. The ship drifts where currents and ice carry it, moving through regions so remote that human encounters remain relatively rare. Yet, despite the isolation, sightings continue occurring. Imagine a group of Inuit hunters traveling across northern waters during a routine journey. The Arctic landscape stretches around them in every direction. Ice dominates the horizon. Then, unexpectedly, a ship appears. Not a vessel under active command, but an abandoned cargo ship moving silently through the frozen environment. Such encounters possess a dreamlike quality because they contrast so sharply with surrounding conditions. The Bachimo seems out of place, a relic from another world drifting through one of Earth's most remote regions. Imagine the reactions of those who approach the vessel. Curiosity naturally follows surprise. Some individuals board the ship. They explore its decks and compartments. They find evidence of abandonment but not destruction. The vessel remains largely intact despite years of exposure to Arctic conditions. Cabins stand empty. Equipment remains where it was left. The Bachimo appears frozen in time, preserved by the very environment expected to destroy it. Imagine explorers documenting sightings and sharing reports with wider audiences. Newspapers publish accounts. Maritime communities discuss developments. The story spreads because it combines real observations with extraordinary circumstances. Unlike many maritime legends, the Bachimo is not merely rumored to exist. Multiple people have seen it. Some have boarded it. The evidence is tangible. Yet the persistence of the ship remains difficult to explain fully. Imagine the vessel drifting through ice fields without human guidance. Currents determine its movements. Weather influences its direction. The ship becomes a passive participant in Arctic environmental systems. Yet, from a human perspective, its movements appear almost purposeful because it continues appearing unexpectedly in different locations. The Bachimo develops a reputation as a wandering ghost, a vessel that refuses to settle into history. Imagine the passage of years. One sighting might be expected. 2 or 3 sightings might seem unusual. Yet reports continue arriving over extended periods. The ship survives far longer than anyone anticipated. Maritime observers begin realizing that the Bachimo represents something genuinely rare. It is no longer simply an abandoned vessel. It has become a long-term phenomenon. Few ships in history have remained visible after abandonment for such extended periods. Imagine attempts to recover the vessel. At various times, people consider salvaging the Bachimo or towing it to safety. Such plans make practical sense because the ship still possesses value. Yet Arctic conditions repeatedly interfere. Weather changes, ice shifts, opportunities disappear. The vessel remains beyond permanent recovery, continues its solitary existence. Imagine the symbolic power of the story. Human beings often attach meaning to objects that survive unexpectedly. The Bachimo becomes a symbol of endurance because it withstands conditions that destroy countless other vessels. Every year it remains afloat adds to its reputation. The ship appears resilient in ways that seem almost impossible. Yet its survival results not from magic but from a combination of construction quality, environmental factors, and remarkable circumstances. Imagine researchers later studying the case. They analyze reports, compare sightings, and attempt to reconstruct the ship's movements. Unlike mysteries involving disappearances, the Bachimo presents a different challenge. The central question is not what happened to the vessel. The central question is why it continued surviving for so long. Understanding requires examining Arctic currents, ice conditions, weather patterns, and ship construction. The mystery is environmental rather than criminal. Yet it remains fascinating because the outcome appears so improbable. Imagine standing aboard the Bachimo during one of its later sightings. Around you stretches a vast Arctic landscape. Ice drifts across the water. Wind moves through empty rigging. No crew members occupy the vessel. No captain directs its course. Yet the ship continues floating, continues existing, continues traveling. The scene feels almost unreal because it challenges expectations about what abandoned ships are supposed to do. Imagine the growing legend surrounding the vessel. Every new report strengthens the narrative. Sailors exchange stories. Explorers reference previous sightings. The Bachimo becomes part of Arctic folklore while remaining entirely real. This combination of documented reality and legendary reputation makes the story particularly powerful. The ship exists at the intersection of fact and imagination. Imagine the final reported sightings. Decades after its abandonment, the Bachimo is still being encountered. Yet eventually the reports stop. No definitive account explains its ultimate fate. Perhaps it finally sank. Perhaps ice destroyed it. Perhaps it rests undiscovered somewhere in the Arctic. The ending remains uncertain. In a sense, the ship that spent decades defying expectations concludes its story with one final mystery. Imagine the legacy left behind. The Bachimo differs from ghost ships like the Mary Celeste or the Carol A. Deering because its mystery does not revolve around missing crews or unexplained abandonments alone. Instead, it revolves around survival. The ship became famous because it continued existing long after logic suggested it should have disappeared. It wandered through the Arctic for decades, creating one of the most unusual chapters in maritime history. And even today, the image remains unforgettable. An abandoned ship drifting silently through frozen seas, appearing and disappearing among the ice. A ghost not because it vanished, but because it refused to. Part 6, The Kaz 2 and Other Modern Mysteries. As we leave behind the stories of the Mary Celeste, the Carol A. Deering, and the Wandering Bachimo, it may be tempting to imagine that ghost ships belong exclusively to the distant past. After all, many of the most famous maritime mysteries emerged during eras when communication was limited, navigation was less precise, and vast regions of the world's oceans remained largely beyond observation. Modern technology, however, has changed much of that world. Satellites monitor shipping lanes. Radio systems connect vessels across enormous distances. Emergency beacons can transmit distress signals almost instantly. Weather forecasting has improved dramatically. Maritime authorities track ship movements with a level of accuracy unimaginable to sailors of earlier centuries. Given these advancements, one might reasonably expect ghost ships to have disappeared entirely. Yet the ocean continues producing mysteries. Even in the modern era, vessels are occasionally discovered under circumstances that seem difficult to explain. The details differ from the classic ghost ship stories, but the fundamental question remains familiar. What happened to the people who should have been aboard? Among the most intriguing modern examples is the story of the Cas-2, often referred to by journalists as the ghost yacht of Australia. Imagine the early years of the 21st century. Maritime technology has reached levels of sophistication that previous generations could scarcely imagine. Recreational sailing is popular in many parts of the world. Communication devices are widely available. Navigation systems provide accurate positioning information. Yet the sea remains the sea. Weather changes rapidly. Human decisions carry consequences. Isolation still exists once a vessel moves far enough from shore. The Cas-2 enters this modern maritime landscape not as a commercial cargo ship, but as a relatively small sailing yacht undertaking what appears to be an ordinary voyage. Imagine the yacht moving through the waters off the coast of Australia. 3 men are aboard. The voyage seems straightforward. The vessel is equipped with modern technology. Conditions appear manageable. To anyone observing the yacht at departure, there is little reason to expect anything unusual. Yet maritime history repeatedly reminds us that extraordinary stories often begin with ordinary departures. The most enduring mysteries rarely announce themselves in advance. Imagine days passing during the voyage. The yacht continues moving through open water. The crew follows routines familiar to sailors everywhere. Navigation is monitored. Equipment is checked. Meals are prepared. Life aboard appears normal. Then, at some point, something changes. As with so many maritime mysteries, the crucial events occur beyond direct observation. No witnesses record exactly what happened. No complete explanation survives. Investigators will later be forced to reconstruct possibilities from the evidence left behind. Imagine a helicopter crew flying over the ocean during routine operations in April 2007. From above, they notice a yacht drifting through the water. At first, nothing seems particularly unusual. Boats are expected to be at sea, yet closer observation reveals details that attract attention. The vessel appears unattended. No visible crew members respond. Attempts to establish communication fail. Curiosity turns into concern. Authorities decide that the yacht deserves further investigation. Imagine rescue personnel approaching the vessel. The yacht remains afloat. Its engine is running. Some sails are still set. From a distance, it appears operational. Yet as investigators board the Cas-2, they encounter a scene that immediately evokes comparisons to earlier ghost ship stories. The yacht is empty. Not one of the 3 men who should be aboard can be found. Imagine moving through the vessel during the initial inspection. Every detail becomes significant because the absence of the crew transforms ordinary observations into potential clues. Food remains on the table. Personal belongings are present. Safety equipment appears largely untouched. A laptop computer is running. Navigation systems remain operational. The scene suggests interruption rather than abandonment. It feels as though the occupants stepped away briefly and never returned. Such impressions naturally attract attention because they challenge expectations about how people normally leave vessels. Imagine the reaction of investigators confronted with this evidence. Modern maritime incidents often generate extensive data. Communication records, weather information, and electronic systems frequently provide valuable insights. Yet despite these advantages, the Cas-2 proves surprisingly difficult to explain conclusively. No distress signal was transmitted. No obvious evidence of violence is discovered. The yacht itself remains functional, yet the crew has vanished. Imagine the public response as news of the discovery spreads. Journalists quickly recognized the similarities between the CAS-2 and famous historical ghost ships. Headlines emphasize mystery. Comparisons to the Mary Celeste appear frequently. The story captures attention because it demonstrates that even in the modern era, the ocean remains capable of producing situations that resist immediate explanation. Imagine investigators examining practical possibilities. Perhaps one crew member fell overboard and the others entered the water attempting a rescue. Such incidents are tragically possible, particularly aboard smaller vessels. Perhaps weather or equipment issues created circumstances requiring urgent action. Perhaps a sequence of events unfolded so quickly that there was no opportunity to send a distress signal. These explanations possess a degree of plausibility because maritime accidents often develop unexpectedly. Yet direct evidence remains limited. Imagine standing aboard the drifting yacht after the discovery. The engine hums softly. Equipment appears ready for use. Personal belongings remain where they were left. The vessel itself seems alive with signs of recent activity. Yet the people responsible for that activity are absent. The contrast is deeply unsettling. It creates the same sense of incompleteness that characterizes many ghost ship stories. The ship remains. The crew does not. Imagine the broader significance of the case. The CAS-2 reminds us that technology reduces risk but does not eliminate uncertainty. Modern communication systems improve safety dramatically, yet they cannot prevent every accident. Electronic devices record information, yet they do not capture every moment. The ocean continues operating according to conditions that sometimes overwhelm human expectations. Even in an age of satellites and digital navigation, mysteries remain possible. The CAS-2 therefore occupies an important place within maritime history. It demonstrates that ghost ship stories are not merely relics of the distant past. They continue evolving. They continue challenging investigators. And they continue reminding us that the sea still possesses an extraordinary ability to conceal crucial details. As investigators continue examining the disappearance associated with the CAS-2 and maritime experts compare the case with other modern mysteries, an important realization begins to emerge. Ghost ships have changed over time, but they have not disappeared. The circumstances surrounding modern cases often differ from those of earlier centuries. Technology provides additional information. Search and rescue systems respond more quickly. Communication records offer valuable clues. Yet despite these advantages, certain incidents still resist complete explanation. The ocean remains vast. Human beings remain vulnerable, and evidence can still vanish with remarkable efficiency once events unfold far from shore. The CAS-2 therefore becomes part of a larger collection of modern maritime mysteries that demonstrate how some questions persist regardless of technological progress. Imagine the challenge facing investigators in contemporary cases. Unlike 19th century authorities, modern researchers often possess access to electronic data, weather archives, communication logs, and sophisticated analytical tools. These resources can eliminate many possibilities quickly, yet they also reveal a surprising truth. Even when information is abundant, crucial moments may remain undocumented. A vessel can be tracked for days, yet the specific event that causes a tragedy may last only seconds. If no one survives to describe those seconds, certainty remains difficult to achieve. The ocean continues creating situations where evidence is incomplete despite advanced technology. Imagine other abandoned vessels discovered in recent decades. Some are found drifting after storms. Others are located with no crew visible and no immediate explanation for their condition. In many cases, investigators eventually identify likely causes. Mechanical failures, weather events, human decisions, and accidents account for numerous mysteries. Yet not every question receives a definitive answer. The line between solved and unsolved is often less clear than popular stories suggest. Maritime investigations frequently produce probabilities rather than certainties. Imagine a modern search and rescue coordinator reviewing reports of a missing vessel. Computers display weather patterns. Satellite systems provide tracking information. Part 7: How Ships Become Ghost Ships. As we reach the final chapter of our journey through the world of ghost ships, it becomes important to step back from individual cases and consider a broader question. Throughout this documentary, we have explored famous vessels such as the Mary Celeste, the Carol A. Deering, the Bachimo, and the Kaz II. Each story possesses its own unique circumstances. Each mystery unfolded in a different era. Different technologies, different oceans, different crews, and different environmental conditions shaped each event. Yet, despite these differences, a common question connects them all. How do ships become ghost ships in the first place? Why do some vessels end up drifting alone across oceans with no crew aboard? Popular imagination often gravitates toward dramatic explanations because mystery naturally attracts speculation. Yet maritime history suggests that the reality is often more complex and, in many ways, more fascinating. Ghost ships are rarely created by a single cause. Instead, they emerge from a combination of environmental forces, human decisions, unexpected circumstances, and the unique challenges of life at sea. To understand ghost ships, we must first understand the environment in which they exist. Imagine standing aboard a vessel in the middle of the open ocean. The horizon stretches endlessly in every direction. Land is nowhere visible. Communication with the outside world may be limited or delayed. Weather conditions can change rapidly. Every system aboard the vessel depends upon proper functioning. Under such circumstances, even seemingly small problems can acquire significant importance. Maritime history repeatedly demonstrates that events which appear minor at first can develop into serious emergencies when they occur far from assistance. The ocean magnifies consequences because isolation limits available options. Imagine one of the most common factors contributing to maritime mysteries. Weather. Storms have influenced human history for thousands of years. At sea, their effects can be especially dramatic. Winds strengthen unexpectedly. Waves grow larger. Visibility declines. Equipment experiences increased stress. Crew members must make rapid decisions under difficult conditions. Most ships survive storms successfully. Skilled sailors prepare for rough weather and adapt accordingly. Yet sometimes conditions combine with other challenges to create situations where ordinary responses become insufficient. Weather alone rarely explains every ghost ship, but it often forms part of the story. Imagine a captain confronting deteriorating conditions. Water enters the vessel. Equipment suffers damage. Navigation becomes difficult. The crew works continuously to maintain control. In such situations, decisions must be made using incomplete information. Is the ship safe? Is the damage manageable? Should the crew remain aboard or prepare alternative plans? These questions are rarely simple because answers depend upon circumstances that may change from one moment to the next. Maritime history contains numerous examples where individuals acted reasonably based upon the information available to them, only for later observers to question those decisions because they possessed the advantage of hindsight. Imagine another important factor: navigation. Even with modern technology, determining position and direction at sea requires attention and accuracy. Historically, the challenge was even greater. Navigational errors could place ships in dangerous waters without immediate realization. Reefs, shoals, and coastlines sometimes appeared unexpectedly. Strong currents altered courses. Fog concealed landmarks. A vessel that seemed secure might suddenly encounter hazards. In certain cases, crews abandoned ships because they believed greater dangers were approaching. Whether those assessments were correct or incorrect often remains difficult to determine afterward. Imagine mechanical failures occurring aboard a vessel. Ships are complex systems composed of numerous interconnected components. Engines, pumps, steering mechanisms, rigging, navigation equipment, and communication devices all contribute to safe operation. Most failures are manageable. Crews repair equipment regularly, yet occasionally multiple problems emerge simultaneously. The cumulative effect can create uncertainty. A captain facing several unrelated issues at once may perceive risks differently than someone observing a single isolated problem. Ghost ship stories sometimes begin not with catastrophe but with concern. Imagine a vessel carrying cargo that introduces additional complications. Certain materials require careful handling. Others create unusual risks under specific conditions. Historical investigations occasionally reveal that cargo influenced crew decisions significantly. The Mary Celeste, for example, carried industrial alcohol, leading some researchers to suggest that fears regarding explosions or fumes may have contributed to the abandonment. Whether that theory is correct remains debated, but it illustrates an important principle. The nature of a ship's cargo can affect how crews interpret threats and respond to uncertainty. Imagine human psychology operating within these environments. Maritime decisions are made by people, not machines. People bring experience, judgment, emotions, and limitations to every situation. Fear influences perception. Stress affects decision-making. Fatigue reduces effectiveness. Even highly competent individuals can misinterpret circumstances when operating under pressure. This reality does not imply incompetence. Rather, it reflects the challenges associated with making critical decisions in dynamic environments. Many ghost ship mysteries may ultimately involve moments where human beings attempted to solve problems using the best information available, only to encounter outcomes they did not anticipate. Imagine a crew entering a lifeboat temporarily. Such actions are not always intended as permanent abandonment. Captains sometimes order precautionary evacuations when they believe a vessel faces immediate danger. The expectation may be that the crew will return once conditions improve. Yet separation from the ship can occur unexpectedly. Weather changes. Tow lines break. Currents intervene. A decision intended as temporary becomes irreversible. Several modern researchers believe scenarios of this type may explain certain historical ghost ships. Imagine the ocean itself as an active participant in every mystery. Unlike environments on land, the sea continuously alters evidence. Waves move objects. Wind changes conditions. Currents carry debris away from original locations. By the time investigators encounter a ghost ship, crucial information may already be lost. This reality complicates every effort to reconstruct events. The final scene may differ significantly from the circumstances that produced it. Imagine standing aboard an abandoned vessel discovered drifting peacefully beneath clear skies. The scene appears calm, yet the events leading to that moment may have involved storms, mechanical concerns, navigational challenges, human decisions, and environmental forces acting together in ways no longer visible. Ghost ships often seem mysterious because investigators encounter the ending without witnessing the beginning. The ocean preserves the result while concealing much of the process. And understanding that distinction brings us closer to understanding how ordinary ships become extraordinary mysteries. As we continue exploring how ships become ghost ships and why certain maritime mysteries endure across generations, it becomes increasingly clear that the process is rarely as dramatic as popular imagination sometimes suggests. The ocean does not require supernatural explanations to create extraordinary situations. Instead, it combines isolation, uncertainty, environmental forces, and human decision-making in ways that occasionally produce outcomes that appear almost impossible when viewed afterward. The challenge for investigators is that ghost ships often represent the final chapter of a story rather than the entire story itself. The vessel provides evidence, but only partial evidence. The crew is absent. Witnesses are limited or non-existent. As a result, understanding how a ship became a ghost ship requires reconstructing possibilities from fragments. In many cases, the most logical explanation may also be the least visible. Imagine a captain standing on deck during deteriorating weather conditions. Rain reduces visibility. Waves increase in size. Equipment requires constant attention. Information arrives through observation rather than certainty. Under such circumstances, decisions are made within narrow timeframes. Waiting too long may increase danger. Acting too quickly may create different risks. Maritime leadership often involves choosing between imperfect options. Historical investigations sometimes reveal that what appears puzzling later may have seemed entirely reasonable in the moment. Yet, because the decision-makers are no longer present to explain their reasoning, investigators are left interpreting actions rather than understanding them directly. Imagine the concept of perceived danger versus actual danger. This distinction plays an important role in many maritime mysteries. A vessel may appear seaworthy when investigators discover it days or weeks later. Yet conditions aboard at the time of abandonment may have looked very different. Water levels, weather patterns, equipment status, and crew perceptions may all have influenced decisions. Human beings respond to what they believe is happening, not necessarily to what later analysis determines was happening. This principle helps explain why experienced sailors sometimes abandon vessels that appear capable of surviving. Imagine the role of communication failures. Modern audiences often assume that emergencies automatically generate distress calls. Yet maritime history demonstrates that many incidents unfold too quickly for effective communication. Equipment may malfunction. Power systems may fail. Individuals may prioritize immediate action over radio transmissions. In certain cases, crews simply do not realize how serious a situation has become until options are already limited. The absence of a distress signal, therefore, does not necessarily indicate the absence of danger. Imagine small events combining into larger crises. A single problem aboard a ship is often manageable. 2 or 3 simultaneous problems may not be. Consider a vessel experiencing navigational uncertainty during deteriorating weather while carrying cargo that raises safety concerns. None of these factors independently guarantees disaster. Together, however, they may create conditions that influence decision-making dramatically. Maritime investigations frequently identify such combinations rather than singular causes. Ghost ships often emerge from chains of events rather than isolated incidents. Imagine the influence of fatigue. Life at sea can be physically and mentally demanding. Long hours, difficult conditions, interrupted sleep, and sustained responsibility affect human performance. Modern transportation industries recognize fatigue as a significant safety factor because it influences judgment and perception. Historical sailors faced these challenges regularly. When evaluating ghost ship mysteries, researchers increasingly consider the possibility that exhaustion may have contributed indirectly to certain decisions. Imagine the ocean's capacity to separate people from vessels. This possibility appears in numerous theories regarding abandoned ships. A crew may leave temporarily for practical reasons. A towline may connect a lifeboat to the ship. Weather conditions may seem manageable initially, then circumstances change. The connection breaks. Wind and currents carry the ship away. The vessel survives. The people do not. Such scenarios may sound improbable, yet maritime history contains documented examples demonstrating that they are entirely possible. The ocean's scale amplifies small separations into permanent ones. Imagine why certain ghost ships become famous while others remain obscure. Maritime records contain many abandoned vessels, most of which attract little long-term attention. Fame often depends upon specific combinations of factors. The Mary Celeste became famous because the circumstances seemed particularly strange. The Bachimo became famous because it continued reappearing. The Cas2 became famous because it occurred in the modern era despite advanced technology. Public fascination tends to focus on cases where evidence appears especially contradictory or incomplete. Imagine the role of storytelling in preserving these mysteries. Human beings naturally seek narratives. When evidence is incomplete, stories help organize uncertainty. Sometimes those stories remain grounded in available facts. Other times they drift toward speculation. Over decades and centuries, ghost ships accumulate layers of interpretation. Historians therefore face two tasks. They must investigate the original event while also examining how public perceptions evolved afterward. The distinction is important because legends often reveal as much about human imagination as they do about maritime history. Imagine a ship discovered drifting quietly beneath a clear sky. Investigators board the vessel. They examine cabins, equipment, and cargo. The crew is absent. Questions emerge immediately. Yet from the ship's perspective, nothing mysterious has occurred. The vessel simply exists where circumstances carried it. The mystery exists because human observers encounter only part of the story. The gap between evidence and explanation creates uncertainty, and uncertainty creates fascination. Imagine the broader lesson ghost ships offer regarding the relationship between people and the ocean. Maritime technology has advanced dramatically over the centuries. Navigation has improved. Communication has expanded. Safety systems have become more sophisticated. Yet the ocean remains an environment where uncertainty cannot be eliminated completely. Human beings have learned to operate more effectively within it, but they have not mastered it entirely. Ghost ships serve as reminders of that reality. Imagine standing on the deck of a vessel at sunset while the sea stretches endlessly toward the horizon. Most voyages conclude safely. Most crews return home. Most maritime incidents are understood and documented. Yet occasionally circumstances align in unusual ways. A ship is discovered without its people. Evidence survives, but explanations remain incomplete. Investigators search for answers. Historians revisit the case. Generations debate possibilities. And a ghost ship is born, not because the vessel itself is supernatural, but because the ocean has once again preserved a question more effectively than an answer. Part 8: The Investigators. As we continue into the final stages of our exploration of ghost ships and maritime mysteries, it is time to focus on a group of people who rarely receive the same attention as the ships themselves. Whenever an abandoned vessel is discovered drifting across the ocean, stranded along a coastline, or trapped within Arctic ice, the mystery does not end with the discovery. In many ways, it begins there. The abandoned ship becomes a question waiting to be answered, and answering that question falls to investigators. Throughout maritime history, countless individuals have devoted extraordinary effort to understanding what happened aboard vessels whose crews disappeared. They include naval officers, maritime inspectors, lighthouse keepers, search and rescue personnel, historians, archaeologists, insurance investigators, and ordinary sailors who happen to encounter unusual circumstances. Their work is often difficult because ghost ship investigations differ fundamentally from most other forms of inquiry. The central witnesses are usually missing. The environment itself actively destroys evidence. And the events being investigated often occur days, weeks, or even months before the vessel was discovered. Imagine an investigator standing on the deck of an abandoned ship for the first time. The vessel rocks gently with the movement of the sea. The wind moves through empty rigging. Personal belongings remain scattered throughout cabins and workspaces. Signs of recent activity may still be visible. Yet no people remain aboard to explain what happened. The investigator faces a challenge similar to arriving at the final page of a book without access to the chapters that came before. The ending is present. The beginning and middle must be reconstructed from clues. Every object aboard the vessel becomes potentially significant because each item may contribute to understanding the larger story. Imagine the process of documenting an abandoned ship. Investigators move carefully through the vessel, recording observations methodically. The condition of sails is noted. Navigation equipment is examined. Logbooks are reviewed. Personal belongings are cataloged. Cargo is inspected. Weather records are consulted. Every detail matters because ghost ship mysteries often hinge upon small pieces of information. A missing lifeboat may suggest one interpretation. A damaged pump may suggest another. The challenge lies not only in collecting evidence but also in determining which evidence is meaningful. Imagine maritime investigators examining the Mary Celeste after it was brought into port. The ship itself survives, allowing detailed inspection. Yet inspection quickly reveals a problem familiar to many investigations. The evidence points in several directions simultaneously. Certain observations suggest weather concerns. Others suggest possible cargo-related issues. Still others indicate ordinary maritime wear and tear. None provides a definitive explanation. Investigators therefore face a situation where evidence exists but certainty does not. Such circumstances are surprisingly common in maritime history. Imagine the ocean's role in complicating investigations. On land, evidence often remains relatively stable. At sea, conditions change continuously. Waves move objects. Wind alters environments. Saltwater accelerates deterioration. Currents transport debris across vast distances. By the time a ghost ship is discovered, crucial information may already be lost. Even the ship itself may have drifted far from the location where the key events occurred. This reality means that investigators are often working with incomplete scenes from the very beginning. Imagine search and rescue personnel responding to reports of an abandoned vessel in the modern era. Technology provides advantages unavailable to earlier generations. Satellite data, communication records, weather archives, and electronic navigation systems offer valuable information. Yet despite these resources, uncertainty frequently remains. A distress signal may never have been transmitted. Electronic records may reveal movement patterns without explaining decisions. Modern tools improve investigations significantly, but they do not eliminate mystery entirely. Imagine the emotional dimension of maritime investigations. Ghost ship cases involve more than historical curiosity. Real people are missing. Families seek answers. Communities wonder what happened. Investigators therefore carry responsibilities extending beyond technical analysis. Their work may influence how events are remembered and understood. The desire to provide explanations is often motivated by empathy as much as by professional obligation. Imagine lighthouse keepers contributing to investigations throughout history. Before modern surveillance systems, these individuals often served as important observers along coastlines. They recorded weather conditions, ship movements, and unusual events. In several famous ghost ship cases, lighthouse reports provided crucial information regarding a vessel's final known movements. Such observations demonstrate that investigations often depend upon contributions from people who were never formally assigned to solve mysteries. Imagine historians revisiting maritime cases decades or even centuries later. Historical investigations differ from immediate inquiries because researchers possess access to broader contexts. They can compare multiple sources, examine long-term patterns, and evaluate earlier conclusions. Yet they also face limitations because evidence may have disappeared permanently. Historical inquiry often involves balancing new perspectives against old constraints. Ghost ship mysteries frequently survive precisely because both factors remain important. Imagine investigators comparing witness statements. Human observations provide valuable information, but they also introduce challenges. Memories fade. Details become distorted. Distances affect perception. Two individuals observing the same event may describe it differently. Maritime investigators must therefore evaluate testimony carefully, identifying consistencies while remaining aware of potential inaccuracies. This process requires patience, experience, and critical thinking. Imagine standing aboard an abandoned vessel at sunset after a day of careful examination. Notes have been recorded. Evidence has been cataloged. The ship's condition has been documented thoroughly. Yet the central question remains unresolved. What happened here? Investigators often reach this point because ghost ship mysteries rarely offer simple answers. The evidence may support several possibilities without confirming any of them conclusively. Imagine how frustrating and fascinating such situations can be simultaneously. Investigators are trained to seek explanations. Maritime mysteries sometimes resist that effort. They remind researchers that evidence and certainty are not identical concepts. One can possess extensive information while still lacking definitive conclusions. The Mary Celeste, the Carol A. Deering, the Bachimo, and the Cas-2 all demonstrate this principle in different ways. Imagine the broader significance of investigative work. Even when mysteries remain unsolved, investigations serve valuable purposes. They eliminate unlikely explanations. They preserve evidence. They improve understanding. They provide frameworks for future research. Most importantly, they transform stories into subjects of careful analysis rather than mere speculation. Ghost ships may remain mysterious, but they are not beyond study. The investigators who dedicate themselves to these cases help ensure that curiosity is accompanied by evidence, and that fascination is balanced by thoughtful inquiry. As maritime investigators continue their efforts across generations and ghost ship cases move from immediate events into historical subjects, another important reality becomes clear. Investigations do not always end when official inquiries conclude. Some mysteries persist for decades. Others survive for centuries. New evidence emerges. Fresh perspectives develop. Technologies improve. Historians revisit old assumptions. In this sense, the investigation of a ghost ship can become an ongoing conversation extending far beyond the lives of the people originally involved. The Mary Celeste remains a subject of analysis more than 150 years after its discovery. The Carol A. Deering continues attracting attention more than a century after its crew vanished. The Bachimo and the Cas-2 still inspire debate. These cases endure because the work of investigators never fully stops. Instead, it evolves. Imagine a historian sitting in an archive decades after a famous maritime mystery occurred. Around them are documents created by earlier investigators, official reports, witness statements, newspaper articles, navigation records, weather observations. Each source preserves fragments of the original event. The historian's task resembles that of a detective working across time. Evidence must be interpreted carefully. Context must be understood. Assumptions must be questioned. Historical investigations often reveal details overlooked by earlier observers because new questions lead researchers to examine familiar material differently. Imagine advances in technology influencing maritime investigations. Modern researchers possess tools unavailable to previous generations. Digital archives allow comparisons across vast collections of documents. Meteorological databases reconstruct historical weather patterns. Satellite imagery assists in understanding environmental conditions. Marine archaeology provides insights into shipwrecks and abandoned vessels. These developments expand possibilities significantly, yet they also demonstrate an important truth. Better tools improve understanding, but they do not guarantee certainty. Some information simply no longer exists. Imagine investigators attempting to reconstruct the final hours of a ghost ship voyage. They may know where the vessel was discovered. They may know its intended route. They may possess weather data and communication records. Yet the most critical moments often occurred without witnesses. The exact sequence of decisions, observations, and reactions remains inaccessible. This limitation explains why many maritime mysteries persist despite extensive research. The challenge is not a lack of effort. It is a lack of direct observation. Imagine the ocean itself as an adversary to investigators. Unlike criminal investigations on land, maritime inquiries often involve environments that actively erase evidence. Storms scatter debris. Currents move objects across enormous distances. Saltwater damages materials. Time compounds every problem. The longer a mystery remains unresolved, the more difficult resolution becomes. Ghost ships therefore present unique investigative challenges because the ocean continuously alters the scene investigators are attempting to understand. Imagine the role of probability in maritime investigations. Contrary to popular portrayals, investigators rarely achieve absolute certainty. Instead, they evaluate possibilities according to available evidence. Certain explanations become more likely than others. Some theories are eliminated entirely, yet final conclusions often involve degrees of confidence rather than complete proof. This reality can be frustrating because human beings naturally prefer definitive answers. Maritime history does not always provide them. Imagine researchers comparing different ghost ship cases. Patterns begin emerging. Weather frequently appears as a contributing factor. Human decision-making often plays a role. Mechanical issues, navigational concerns, and environmental conditions recur repeatedly. These patterns help investigators understand how ghost ships are created, even when specific cases remain unresolved. The goal shifts from solving every mystery individually to understanding broader principles collectively. Imagine a search and rescue professional reflecting upon modern maritime incidents. Despite technological advances, many challenges remain familiar. Communication can fail. Weather can change unexpectedly. Human beings can make difficult decisions under pressure. The sea remains vast. Ghost ships, therefore, continue serving as reminders that uncertainty has not disappeared from maritime life. It has merely changed form. Imagine why the public remains fascinated by investigators themselves. Part of the appeal lies in the contrast between mystery and method. Ghost ship stories begin with uncertainty. Investigators respond with systematic inquiry. They collect evidence, test theories, evaluate claims. Their work represents an effort to bring order to confusion. Even when complete success proves impossible, the process itself remains compelling because it demonstrates humanity's determination to understand the unknown. Imagine standing aboard the Mary Celeste, the Carol A. Deering, the Bachimo, or the Cas-2 during the earliest stages of investigation. In each case, the ship offers clues but not answers. Investigators must decide what questions to ask before they can begin searching for solutions. This requirement highlights an important aspect of inquiry. Understanding depends not only upon evidence but also upon curiosity. The willingness to ask difficult questions drives every investigation forward. Imagine the passage of time transforming mysteries into historical subjects. Immediate concerns fade. Emotional reactions soften. Researchers gain perspective. Yet certain questions remain. What happened aboard? Why were particular decisions made? Could events have unfolded differently? Such questions persist because they touch upon fundamental aspects of human experience. Uncertainty, risk, judgment, and survival are themes extending far beyond maritime history. Imagine a future researcher examining one of today's unresolved cases many decades from now. New evidence may emerge. Fresh interpretations may develop. Technologies not yet invented may reveal information currently inaccessible. The possibility of future discovery remains one reason ghost ship mysteries continue attracting attention. An unanswered question today may become a solved puzzle tomorrow. Yet even if complete solutions never arrive, the investigations themselves retain value. Imagine the ocean at night. Ships move across dark water guided by lights, instruments, and experience. Most journeys proceed without incident. Yet occasionally something unusual occurs. A vessel is found abandoned. A crew disappears. Questions arise. Investigators respond. The cycle begins again. Through their efforts, mysteries are explored rather than ignored. Evidence is preserved rather than forgotten. Stories become subjects of careful inquiry rather than mere legends. And perhaps that is the most important contribution investigators make. They remind us that while the ocean may conceal answers, it also invites understanding. The search itself matters. The questions matter. And in the world of ghost ships, where certainty is often elusive, the pursuit of knowledge becomes a story just as fascinating as the mysteries it seeks to explain. Part 9: The Unsolved Ocean. As we arrive at the final segment of our journey through the world of ghost ships, abandoned vessels, missing crews, and maritime mysteries, we find ourselves returning to the place where every story in this documentary ultimately begins and ends: the ocean. Throughout human history, the sea has served as a highway, a source of food, a battlefield, a frontier, and a bridge connecting distant civilizations. It has carried explorers across unknown horizons, merchants between continents, and sailors into environments both beautiful and dangerous. Yet, despite thousands of years of experience, the ocean remains one of the least understood places on Earth. Modern technology has transformed navigation, communication, and exploration. Satellites monitor shipping routes. Weather forecasting has improved dramatically. Deep-sea research reveals previously hidden regions of the planet. And yet, even today, vast portions of the ocean remain largely unexplored. It is within this immense and often mysterious environment that ghost ships continue to capture human imagination. The stories we have explored are not merely stories about vessels. They are stories about uncertainty itself. Imagine standing alone on the deck of a ship at night. Above you stretches a sky filled with stars. Around you lies an endless expanse of dark water. The nearest land may be hundreds of miles away. In every direction, the horizon disappears into darkness. Such experiences have been shared by sailors for centuries. They create a unique awareness of scale. Human beings are remarkably capable, yet the ocean reminds us constantly that we operate within environments far larger than ourselves. Ghost ship stories emerge from this relationship. They remind us that even when evidence survives, complete understanding may not. Imagine the Mary Celeste drifting quietly across the Atlantic in December of 1872. The vessel survives. The cargo remains aboard. The crew is gone. Generations of investigators examine the evidence. Theories emerge. Possibilities are debated. Yet certainty remains elusive. The mystery survives because the crucial moments occurred beyond observation. Imagine the Carol A. Deering stranded upon Diamond Shoals. The ship is present. Witness reports exist. Investigations are conducted. Yet the final fate of the crew remains unclear. Again, the ocean preserves some information while concealing the rest. Imagine the Bachimo wandering through Arctic waters for decades after abandonment. Unlike other ghost ships, its mystery centers on survival rather than disappearance. Yet even here, questions persist. Why did it endure so long? What ultimately became of it? The ship drifts into legend because the Arctic, like the ocean itself, offers only partial answers. Imagine the Cas-2 discovered in modern times, equipped with technology unimaginable to 19th century sailors. The vessel remains operational. Equipment functions. Personal belongings remain aboard. Yet the crew is absent. The story demonstrates that technological progress reduces uncertainty but does not eliminate it entirely. The sea still possesses an ability to surprise. Imagine what these cases reveal collectively. None of them requires supernatural explanations. None depends upon impossible events. Yet all of them feel mysterious because they expose the limits of knowledge. Human beings naturally seek complete narratives. We want beginnings, middles, and endings. Ghost ships often provide only fragments. The vessel represents one fragment. The disappearance represents another. Everything connecting those fragments must be reconstructed through investigation and imagination. Imagine the psychological power of unanswered questions. Solved mysteries often become historical facts. Unsolved mysteries remain active. They invite participation. Every generation revisits the evidence and asks new questions. Historians develop fresh interpretations. Researchers identify overlooked details. Readers form their own conclusions. Ghost ships survive in public memory because uncertainty keeps them alive. A solved case may be understood. An unsolved case continues evolving. Imagine sailors throughout history sharing stories of abandoned vessels encountered at sea. Such stories served multiple purposes. They entertained. They warned. They encouraged caution. They reminded listeners that the ocean could produce situations beyond immediate explanation. Maritime culture has always included an awareness of uncertainty because uncertainty is a natural feature of life at sea. Ghost ships became symbols of that awareness. Imagine the ocean as a vast archive containing countless untold stories. Every ship crossing its surface leaves traces. Most traces disappear quickly. A few survive. Shipwrecks preserve fragments of voyages. Documents record observations. Artifacts reveal details about daily life. Yet much of maritime history remains inaccessible. The ocean does not intentionally conceal information, but its scale and conditions make preservation difficult. Ghost ship mysteries emerge when enough evidence survives to raise questions but not enough survives to answer them fully. Imagine future generations continuing to study these cases. New technologies may reveal information currently unavailable. Marine archaeology may uncover additional evidence. Historical research may identify overlooked sources. Certain mysteries may eventually be explained. Others may not. The possibility of discovery remains part of their appeal. Every ghost ship contains the potential for future understanding. Imagine standing once more upon the deck of an abandoned vessel drifting quietly beneath a calm sky. The ship itself appears ordinary. Wood, metal, sails, engines, equipment. Nothing about these objects is inherently mysterious. The mystery arises because human presence is missing. The vessel was built to carry people. It was designed for crews, decisions, and journeys. Without those people, the ship becomes a question. A silent reminder that events occurred beyond our view. Imagine the enduring lesson offered by ghost ships. They remind us that knowledge has limits. Investigations have limits. Technology has limits. Yet they also remind us that curiosity persists. Human beings continue asking questions even when answers prove difficult to obtain. The desire to understand remains one of our defining characteristics. Ghost ships endure not because they defeat investigation, but because they inspire it. They encourage us to look closer, think deeper, and remain open to possibilities. In that sense, every abandoned vessel discovered at sea becomes more than a mystery. It becomes an invitation to explore the boundary between what we know and what we do not know. And nowhere is that boundary more vast than the ocean itself. As our voyage through the world of ghost ships draws toward its conclusion and the stories of abandoned vessels fade gradually into the rhythm of the sea, we are left with a final reflection. Throughout this documentary, we have explored ships discovered without crews, vessels that wandered alone across oceans, investigations that searched for answers, and mysteries that survived for generations. As our journey through the world's most mysterious ghost ships comes to an end, the ocean slowly grows quiet once again. Tonight, we explored vessels that seemed to exist between history and legend. We sailed alongside the famous Mary Celeste, perhaps the most well-known ghost ship ever discovered. We examined the strange fate of the Carol A. Deering, abandoned upon the shores of the Outer Banks. We followed the extraordinary journey of the Bachimo, a vessel that seemed unwilling to disappear even after being abandoned. And we explored the modern mystery of the Cas-2, proving that even in the age of satellites and advanced technology, the sea can still leave investigators searching for answers. Along the way, we discovered that ghost ships are rarely supernatural. Instead, they are reminders of something far more real: the immense scale of the oceans, the limits of human knowledge, and the countless stories that unfold beyond the reach of observation. For every mystery that is eventually solved, there are others that remain unanswered. Ships that vanished without explanation, crews that were never found, journeys that ended in ways nobody fully understands. The ocean keeps many of its secrets, and perhaps it always will. Yet that uncertainty is part of what makes maritime history so fascinating. Every abandoned vessel becomes a puzzle. Every ghost ship becomes a question. And every question invites another generation of explorers, historians, sailors, and dreamers to continue searching for answers. As you settle in and allow the sounds of the sea to drift gently into the background, imagine calm moonlight reflecting across an endless ocean. Imagine distant waves moving steadily beneath a sky filled with stars. Imagine the silhouettes of forgotten ships far beyond the horizon. Some remembered, some lost, and some still waiting for their stories to be told. If you enjoyed this voyage through maritime mysteries, ghost ships, abandoned vessels, and unsolved ocean legends, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us continue creating long-form history for sleep documentaries exploring lost civilizations, forgotten expeditions, mysterious disappearances, ancient discoveries, legendary shipwrecks, hidden treasures, and the greatest unsolved mysteries from history. There are still countless stories waiting beyond the horizon. More mysteries hidden beneath the waves. More abandoned places. More forgotten journeys. And many more chapters of history waiting to be explored together. Thank you for joining me on tonight's voyage. Until our next journey, may the seas remain calm, the winds remain gentle, and your dreams carry you safely across peaceful waters. Good night, sleep well, and I'll see you in the next story.